I haven't told anyone. This will be a surprise to a lot of people.
I don't think we really spoke about it. I think, you know, for me, probably this is the first time I didn't say it publicly.
This is how rugby made me with British Airways. I'm Alma Smith and I'm here at Twickenham Stadium to speak to two women who have shaped the women's game in England. Now, we had almost 50,000 spectators in here recently for England-Ireland, and the interest from participation, but also broadcast and commercial, is bigger than it's ever been before. The women's game and the opportunities now affords players both on and off the pitch is at an unparalleled high point. But it hasn't always been this way.
You'd get comments on the sideline from parents saying, you know, tackle her, she's only a girl, or how have you let the girls score? Or, so it's interesting that society was telling me something that I wasn't actually feeling.
Nolli Waterman, former Red Roses fullback, now well-known pundit and familiar face on your TV, used to play with Kim Oliver, who is now an assistant coach at Ealing Trailfinders. Long before the Red Roses era, you might be surprised to know that they were actually stopped from playing rugby when they were in the minis and juniors phase of their rugby development. And so they just decided to change that. And they absolutely shaped the pathway available to girls in this country, girls who, like them, want to play on this pitch. Thank you for joining me. Now, the two of you played together at international level, but when did you find rugby? Shall we start with you, Kim? Where did you start playing?
When I was 9. For Chippenham Rugby Club back in Wiltshire. Didn't really know much about it, went to watch my brother play at school and ran along to the rugby club and asked to play. And they said they didn't know if girls were allowed, so we did it anyway.
Ah.
Yeah, it was great.
And you, Nolli, you started playing in New Zealand, right?
A little bit earlier, about 4, I went, well, I was kind of lived at the rugby club anyway. My dad played down in Minehead for the Barbarians. 2 big brothers, kind of like Kimmy. I was up there anyway. Mum was probably helping out at the club. And then about 4, I started to join in because Dad was coaching the team that my middle brother was playing for. And then, yeah, I went to New Zealand when I was 5, and then that was when I was flat out involved in a team and for Palmerston North High School Old Boys. Only girl in the club, but I don't know, I suppose, I don't know whether you were ever made to feel any different. My family never made me feel any different. You know, my brother's always said to me, if she wants to play, I would say to my mum, well, if she wants to play, she's got to be good enough. And I was never, the little girl in the family, I was just Nolli. And I think that attitude that my brothers, but also my parents had, then translated into me just sitting and taking part. The boys loved it because I did most of the tackling, to be honest. Because when you learn tackling with your brothers that are 2 and 4 years older, you can technically hold your own. And I was an aggressive little lady, so... yeah.
Was it like that for you, Kim, where you were just aggressive from the word go and ready to...
Yeah, I think so. So my brother's like the nice, placid one, doesn't have a competitive bone in his body, and then there's me who, tears things apart. I remember my dad used to try and teach us to tackle in the front room, and I'd run at him and obviously try and knock him over. My brother would run at him and stop, and my dad just be like, just run through me, and Daniel was like, really want to. Whereas I was like trying to knock him onto the sofa or go totally, make him look silly. So I think, I was always aggressive. But I think rugby lets you,
competitive.
Competitive, aggressive. It lets it get that out of you. You can kind of get rid of some of the frustrations or whatever it is when you go and hit someone really hard with your shoulder.
Is that why you enjoyed it, you think, at a young age?
I think, but I also think just being part of a team, being a girl and people not really saying anything about that, you just join the team. Although one of the boys did say to me, if you're not my girlfriend, then I'm going to tell everyone not to pass you the ball. So then I had a boyfriend, the last one. That was fun. That was at under 10s, I think. I think just being part of a team for me is so important, and those boys protected me and looked after me, and I was one of them. There was no, Kim's a girl, or Kim, it was just one of them because I could play and I was decent, I think. And like Nolli said, you basically did all the tackling.
Yeah. Were you aware at a young age that there was a standard here that you had to play up to or live up to, or do you think it was very intrinsic because you'd grown up with brothers and it just felt really natural?
I think probably my brothers set the tone of hold your own.
Yeah.
I genuinely don't think I ever felt any different until you'd get comments on the sideline from parents saying, you know, tackle her, she's only a girl, or how have you let the girls score? So it's interesting that society was telling me something that I wasn't actually feeling.
Yeah.
Because I absolutely agree with Kim. Like, my teammates were some of my best friends. I loved going and spending time with them. We had such a close bond, and we were all so different. I mean, especially in the West Country initially, you know, you've got all the guys coming from the farms or from the different towns in and around Exmoor. So then to be able to come together, and I didn't play rugby at school. I wasn't allowed to. The school were like, they were like, oh God, this is weird. Like, we can't have a girl coming onto a boys' trip. So it was something that I had friends from not just the school, but it was like a different community. And I think that that's what sport in general does for young people, is it gives you a different group of friends that aren't necessarily the ones that you're in lessons with or you hang out with at school and at lunchtimes and stuff. So yeah, like, it was class. And I came back from New Zealand age 9 and then played for Minehead Barbarians for 3 years before we had to give up. So I had a couple of different teams that I was part of, and I loved it.
What position did you play back then?
So I was actually, there wasn't really positions when I was in New Zealand, but when I came back, I was a stocky little girl. I was a unit, and I had big shoulders from swimming and gymnastics, and I was a prop. And then, because I can hold my own. And then when we got second rows, which was my last year, so it was like the scrum went from 3 to 5, the coach was like, yeah, we don't really want the boys putting their hands between your legs or putting their heads around there, so you can go to fly half. And then, so I finished out my playing career with the boys at fly half.
Did you pass?
No, I don't think so. I didn't need to. But interestingly, my last ever game for Minehead Barbarians was the Minis and Juniors Festival. What did you become?
Pass, I don't know.
It was like the big thing in the Southwest. You get teams from all over, you get a lot of teams from Wales. And it transpired in my first year at uni that the boy that I started going out with actually played in the team. He played for Caerphilly in my last ever game. And for some reason, we can't find photographs of the match, but we actually played fly half against each other.
Oh, that's brilliant.
And I know because Phil Dolman, who was Exeter stalwart for years, we sat in our one of our lessons together at uni, and he was like, we were chatting, we said, we're the same age. He said, Minehead, yeah, I went down there, and we were kind of like, and he went, oh my gosh, you're that girl. And I was like, what do you mean? He was like, you're that girl. He's like, I got so much stick on the bus home, like the boys ripped into me, like they couldn't believe it because you dump tackled me. And I was devastated, and he was like, I'm so pleased now because you played for England and you're like going to go on to have a good career. I can actually claim it as a...
Yeah. It just makes being dump tackled a bit more credible now.
Yeah. But yeah, like, I think playing for the different teams and being not just part of my team, but I think going back to the club now, I don't know whether you go back to the club. And
I try to.
Yeah, and
coach the girls down there sometimes.
It's just so, it's a community that you feel part of, that you're deep-rooted part of. They're incredibly proud of what I've done. And, the people that were my Minis and Juniors coach are now still involved. They go down and have a beer on the weekend. And it's an important part of my life, and they're a big part of it as well.
And you, Kim? Prop?
No. So I think I started probably on the wing because it's like brand new to it, didn't really know, and then gradually moved in, and then when it got to enough players, I was at fullback, and my job was basically run to that corner and tackle someone, and now run to that corner flag and tackle someone, and run to that corner flag and tackle someone, and that was my job, corner flag.
That's why you ended up in the centre, mate. I had to do all the tackling.
And then obviously the women's game I ended up at 10, but with the boys it was basically wherever I would tackle, because the boys weren't very good at it, if I'm honest.
I love that was your contribution when you were playing with
corner
boys.
Flag. Yeah.
But it's that strong spirit that got you in the newspaper. If you've got those clippings here.
I do.
Show us the clippings of all of the Kim Oliver newspaper.
Well, there's more than these. They're laminated because I don't want them to get wrecked. So this is just a little picture. Where am I showing it?
So muddy. Look at that.
That's the boy, Michael Smith.
Was that your boyfriend?
Yep. Forced.
Michael Smith. I love that he's getting
And then
his
these
moment in
two.
the sun. Which one do you like best?
I'm not really sure that I like the rugby girl tries to be one of the boys, but I probably did like it at the time. Look, in action, her mother is ready to tackle the ban in court. Her mother. Big bad Terry.
And the top heading in black, Kim, 13, defies the ban on mixed sex matches.
Yeah, I
The
don't really
Daily
look
Mail.
13, do I? I look about 10.
The
Look at that, it's got a desperate down on my rugby ball.
Here you go. What is it? Out of touch.
At the moment, rugby, fanatic Kim is still playing, but her mum Terry says the ban on 13-year-old girls playing in mixed teams is sex discrimination. Go on, mum.
Mum Terry, that
Yeah,
is
legend.
really impressive. So you're playing with the boys and your boyfriend. Then you turn 12.
Yeah.
What happened?
So you go into the under-12s, and while I was in the under-12s, they said, "Oh, this will be your last season." I was like, "What? Yeah, you're not allowed to play. Girls cannot play with boys from under-12s." So Mum was like, "Oh, okay. So what happens then?" "Well, you can play again when you're 16 with women. So what do you do in the 4 years in between?" And that's, I think, where my mum, although she's stubborn old witch, my mum just thinks that if you're good enough to play, you should be allowed to play. If you can do it physically, then why can't you? And I think at that age, at 12 years old, I don't really see there's any reason why you can't. If you want to play with boys, then that's fine, isn't it? Go and play with girls, go and play with girls, that's fine. But actually, if you're good enough to play with the boys, then why can't you? Especially back then when there was no girls team whatsoever. So I was the only girl at every rugby club I ever played against. And I think my mum was just like, don't tell my child she can't do something because that's unacceptable. Especially if I was rubbish, I think mum would have been like, yeah, okay, love. Like, or if I was getting hurt every week, but I wasn't. I was one of the better players. I had all the respect. The boys didn't want me to leave. So I think it's just my mum's thing is like, don't tell her she can't do something.
Because the rules said.
Because that's what somebody says, many years ago. And I think
Because you're a girl.
Yeah, because I'm a girl. And I think for my mum, that's unacceptable. And therefore she would fight it to the death.
It's wild to think about it now, but you were told the same thing, right?
Yeah, like I knew probably going into my last season that it would be my last. I was gutted. Again, I was physically far more, able to play in that age group. As I say, I was the second biggest in my team at the time. I think realistically for me, I probably would have played one more season and then would have said, okay, the boys are getting more physical and maturing as well. But I didn't even know there was girls rugby. I didn't know that there was women playing. I didn't know anything. So it was just, this thing that you love, all of your friends, everything that you do every week that you are good at. I would go and get player of the tournament, or I would, and I desperately felt part of that club. Yeah, you can't come anymore because you're a girl. So it was quite difficult, but fortunately, the newspapers actually wrote about my situation on the back of that. Kim's mum reached out to my dad, found my dad in the yellow pages, but went to the phone
BT
book,
phone book, whatever it was.
BT phone book, which was however long, and went to Waterman and went to the Waterman that lived in Minehead and gave my dad a ring on the old house phone and said, my daughter is the same. But Kim was a year older, so I think you'd already come here, hadn't you?
Well, I was still playing. I played till under 14s. I defied the odds because my mum's a rebel.
Yeah.
Like I said,
I played by the rules.
my mum doesn't play by the rules.
Terry was like, no.
Yeah, absolutely. I think even if I didn't want to play anymore, I would have still had to play. But I think, so basically it was like, no, you can't play. And my mum said, like, obviously, why? And the reason, they couldn't give us a reason. And so I carried on playing until I was 14. My mum rang the RFU and spoke to some man that said some rather discriminative things, and that was that. Mum was like, right, that's it now, I'm going to fight you because it's unacceptable. And we ended up here, under 14s, when they told me that I couldn't play anymore, and if my rugby club continued to let me play, then they would deduct points from the men's first team. Chippenham obviously were then like, I'm really sorry, Kim, we can't, we want to support you, but this is the men's first team. And I was like, well, I don't want to be that person.
No.
So we ended up having I think my mum then, I don't know why, but that was probably when we went to the papers. From the papers that RFU contacted mum, probably a nicer person, so would have got a better side of her. And we ended up at the thing across the road. What's it called? The old Rugby house or whatever. Yeah. Had a meeting in there, and lots of older men in suits and ties, and then myself, my mum, my dad, the chairman of the Chippenham Rugby Club, Rod Turvey, and a legal lady that had basically given up her time for free because my mum had contacted and basically came and was like, I'll do this entirely free because this is absolutely outrageous. Wow. So they spoke, said their bit, and then nobody realised, but I'd written my own thing, so I stood up and had my little moment without crying, and I be honest with you, I can't remember a word I said, but it would have been something like, this is my team, like, you know, you can't just take that away from me. Like, I've been a part of this for 6 years or however long it had been. They want me to play. Why, what's the reason to stop me? Like, give me something else. And I remember after I sat down and they kind of discussed, and they said, look, Kimberly, I know, that's my posh name. We can't allow you to play girls rugby, but we have employed this lady who is Helen Ames, do you remember her? Mm-hmm. And she is going, I promise you that she will set up girls rugby. So there was no girls rugby and she will set that up. And I think for 6 months or so I didn't have any rugby, and from then the whole bit started. And that's where I said before, I walked over the hill for these trials and there was just loads of girls, and it was like, wow, girls play rugby too, like, this is so cool. Although I still probably would have chosen to play with the boys because that was my team. Actually going and seeing that moment of walking over and there being like, I don't know, 30, 40 girls was, well, I don't know if there was that many, I might have just made it up, might have been 12, but just to see that there was other girls that were interested in playing sport and playing rugby, especially for me, was like, that was a game changer.
That's a magnificent experience to have had at such a formative age, but to have been the child who would sit in that room. Now I can imagine your parents coming down to Twickenham to Rugby House to come and see all of these.
My mum wouldn't have gone without me there, there's no way. Like, I probably don't know if I should have been there as a child, but there's no way my mum wouldn't have taken me there so I could say my bit.
Yeah, I think,
it's weird, isn't it?
Yeah, when you look at the reasoning why, and the rule is still in place, at 12 is when girls finish. Obviously there's far more available for girls now, and we can talk about that, but I think when you look at the biology behind it, it's all been done in a way to protect players in the sport, but the big thing for me, and it's probably exactly the same for you, Kim, was at the time there was no other option. At the time there was no discussion or conversation with the individuals, and when you're looking at a minority group and the ability to be able to say your side of the story, and I think for me the fact that I've never heard that, I've never heard what actually Kim went through. All I knew was that this really amazing mum rang my dad and told me that there was another girl in the southwest that played. Like, I didn't even know. And so instantly, from one phone call, I was inspired to say, could I play one more year? I decided that I wouldn't, but it meant that there was hope that there could be more girls elsewhere playing. Because if Kim was in the southwest, then there definitely would be girls down in London, because that was a big city. I think it was done in the best interest, and I think still now. But I still think that it's something that, well,
it was just seen as a man's sport back then, wasn't it? It was a sport for boys, and wouldn't have been thought about. I think that, there might be a girl that wants to play rugby. Well, how do we deal with that when she gets to 12? Oh, there isn't anything in place. Actually, that wouldn't have been thought about. It was just like, well, girls can play rugby till this age done. And why would they want to play any longer? It's boys play rugby. Whereas now it's obviously that, as we're aware, that is totally different.
When you came down to Rugby House to make your little Billy Elliot speech to all of the uncles in the boardroom, this was what, 1999?
I don't know, I was born in 1983, so I'm not ready.
And you were how old?
97 it would be.
I was 13. I was in the under 14, so I was 13. I was going into the under 14 season, and that's when they said you can't do it anymore.
So this was a few years after England had already won the Women's Rugby World Cup in 1994.
Yes, but I don't think I knew that England women was a thing.
No, I had no idea.
I didn't know that England women. I think the first time I went to see England women play was something like I think after that meeting, actually, they may have told us, because I remember going to, I think, Worcester to watch. Like Giselle was playing, Yeah.
Giselle Mather.
Yeah, she was on
that you
that.
work with now.
Yeah, so that's mental, isn't it? And like Susie and all the older girls. So I had watched them play, but you didn't look up to them because you didn't know they existed. Whereas now, obviously, that's totally different. You know, my favourite player was like Rob Andrew at the time, I think, back in the day, Will Carling and
Vainga Tuigamala, big winger from New
yeah.
Zealand. I was like, he bosses it.
But now girls can look up and be inspired by Abby Dow or, you know, these Sarah Byrne, whatever. Like it's so cool that that's what girls see. And whereas I didn't get that, I didn't have that opportunity. There was nothing else.
But that's what's so fascinating about your experience and you standing up in the way that you did, and your mum being as convinced of this being a valid cause to fight for when there was no example of this. And
yeah, she's, like I say, she's stubborn. Like, but she'll, if my mum believes in something and believes that someone is doing something wrong, she will fight to the death. Because that's what she believes, and she won't beat. You can't beat her. It's really difficult to beat her in an argument. In fact, it's a nightmare. But
the RFU found this out the hard way.
But she's just so protective and like this. My daughter wants to play rugby. She's very good at rugby. Now we know she could play, potentially go and play for England. Why are you stopping her? What did she do for 4 years? So how many? I think for me the sadness is how many girls were lost to the game age 12 to 16. Because they didn't do anything. And then what are they doing? What were they doing? So how many girls as good as myself and Nolli, where are they now? You know, and they've probably gone off and have never thought about playing rugby again, and maybe until they got to university. But I think that's, for me, that's really sad, is where are those girls that played when I played? Or
Yeah, and at such a formative age, you're being told you can't do something because of your gender.
Yeah.
Like at no point had I ever really thought at that point I was super different. I mean, obviously I knew as I was growing up that I had my own changing rooms. Well, I didn't even have changing rooms. I don't know whether you did.
The table toilet.
Yeah, I went into the girls' loos at the rugby clubs and would wash my knees and wash my hands.
Leave the sink in an absolute state.
Yeah, I actually got told off. I remember getting told off by a lady saying it's completely inappropriate for there to be mud in the women's toilets, and I cried because I said, but where am I supposed to go? Like, what am I supposed to do? Because,
no changing rooms.
No changing rooms. But the team would always say, well, if you want to go first, like, we'll wait, or like, you know, obviously things have changed significantly now with lots of the facilities, but even the facilities around the facilitation of having a girl in a boys' environment or men's environment was just non-existent.
You guys went on to win Grand Slams with England, and I'm sure you must have reflected on a lot of these experiences with your teammates.
Yeah.
Are they not surprised at all that Kim Oliver was the person who was in the news?
I haven't told anyone. This will be a surprise to a lot of people.
I don't think we really spoke about it. I think, you know, for me, probably this is the first time I don't say it publicly, but thank Kim, because I think without Terry, without Kim sharing the fact that they were fighting it with the RFU, getting in touch with my dad, I wouldn't have had that inspirational piece of there was someone else playing and like make a team in my head, do something, continue this sport if you know it's something you're good at. I was really lucky I had great teachers that tried to keep me entertained with all the other sports that I was okay at, but making a team in my school and having a couple of fixtures then, and then playing in the local side, then finding out about the Southwest trials together, I absolutely wouldn't have had the start and the kickstart into playing girls rugby. And would I have found it? Possibly, because I went to university, but would that have been too late? You know, I got capped when we went to Oldfield. You know, the fact that we went to an academy at 16, you know, Kim having that conversation only a couple of years before, people were employed by the RFU, the RFUW. I'm not quite sure when the RFUW was set up, all of that process, that, you know, that conversation Kim had would have absolutely been a catalyst to push for change. But we then became a generation of real change for the women's game, because all of a sudden, you know, my first cap, I was still at school, I was 18 years old, and I remember sitting, it was the last game of the Six Nations, I remember sitting for breakfast and we were chatting, and it was like I was on the bench with Susie Appleby and all of the players, and I think I was one of the players that had played the game the longest, and I was 18 years old, and so I was the kind of start of a generation that brought in this new age of very young players that had been playing the game from with the boys
They all
or
started
from
at uni.
school. Yeah.
Like Susie started at uni and-
It transformed the game. They were amazing role models, amazing players. The fact that they only picked it up at such a late age was unbelievable. Obviously they'd achieved what they had, but vast majority of that was behind closed doors. So, which was such a shame because they played such an amazing brand. They were world champions.
Yeah.
So I think absolutely it accelerated what I personally got from the game, but I think the bigger piece of then the likes of myself, Kim, Rachel Burford, Claire Allen, Kat Merchant, Maggie Alfonsi, you know, like all of these names that are pretty well known in the game now, were ones that were getting capped very early on in their career. And had that had happened, if little Kim Oliver hadn't read her speech, I'm not quite sure.
How does that feel?
Cheers, mate. It's still a pain.
I don't know, like it's just I just think I just did it. Like I don't think I would. I don't really think about it because I very much was like that was living in the moment and doing my thing to try and. I don't think I was really trying to change it for anyone else. I just wanted to play rugby and that was it. My mum would have been looking at the bigger picture. I was a 13-year-old girl that just wanted to play rugby, and I think now I can look back and go, do you know what, that was pretty epic and brave of me to stand up in front of some old men in suits that were telling me I couldn't do something and explain to them my feelings and my emotions of why I should be able to. And that's quite special now, but I've never really spoken about it. I don't know. I think you just get on with it, don't you? And you know, I had this amazing rugby career, so that doesn't really matter. But in the whole scheme of things, it really does matter because without that, we probably wouldn't be where we are now.
What an adventure the two of you have been on.
Yeah, many more than that we can't talk about. Actually.
But how good?
Swansea hen do.
But how good to have had someone to witness all of this growth.
In fact, my mum said to me this morning, give my favourite daughter a cuddle. I was like, oh, okay. Considering I'm the only actual one.
Actual daughter. Moral of the story, ask for what you need.
Yes, get a mum like Terry.
Get a mum like Terry and make some great friendships along the way.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you're a special one, Kimmy.
Blame Terry.
To feel inspired for your next adventure, head to ba.com.